listening to the Questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the Questionnaires.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The Questionnaire.
Get your Comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.
Every time it's like this. Every single time. It's the Questionnaire, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, and we got a dope new logo even, I gotta say. Right? I gotta throw that out right on the bat. Even though you've seen that logo for a couple episodes now for everybody out there watching. You know what I mean? Because it first appeared on Gavin Smith and Rich Duke's episode, which is, we're getting that all set out to where we can get it out right now, real quick right now, right? But I just got to say thank you to Andrew Thomas because, man, I'm liking that logo. I really am digging it, man. Y'all can see it, like, I think probably right here or right here, or look, it's somewhere in this vicinity, so y'all can check that out, man. No, Andrew did a phenomenal job on it. He's also coming up here fairly soon on a PanCon where we're going to tribute to Akira Toriyama, right? And we're going to have some 5 artists come on and do a little something in regards to that, so I'm very, very interested to see what everybody will churn up. And just, I got to thank Andrew, that new logo, man, it looks good, right? But, right, that's Andrew might be joining our cast of co-hosts over here too, but he ain't here today. Today, it's the man that made me answer the questionnaire. He did. He made me do it. Vlad, how you doing?
Hey, not bad.
What would make
Going
you
through. Always can be better, but so far so good. How are you guys?
Man, it's crazy over here as always. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to keep up with keeping up and getting the show out because we got so many things coming. You know what I'm saying? You guys check out that episode with Alan Henry as well as the PanCon over on the Patreon. That's got Alan, Scott, Dave, Hannibal. Yeah, Alan, Scott, Dave, and Hannibal. Yeah, it was a pleasure and always fun to have on. And the conversations we got into with Alan as far as just prosthetic suit, like the suits he has to wear in his films and how terrible they are. I'd recommend you guys go check it out. It was a great conversation. It really, really was. Like I said, as well as everything else, man, that has dropped. I'm loving season 2. So let's keep it going, Vlad. What you think?
I think we should, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Heating up.
I have too many guests on, and let's just swing the bat and see if I hit or miss, Vlad. Right? That's what we're gonna do. Because I know it's John. I'm pretty sure it's Holland.
Yeah.
You
got it.
Oh my God.
There you go. Right from the first.
No, dude. We're booking out we're booking way out right now because I got Vlad and Scott both doing some booking over on the show, and thank you, Vlad, as well as thank you, Scott, for that, man. It's just bloody well crazy, right? And everything we got coming up. So I'm trying to keep names straight in my head, and it hurts, right? I mean, it's not like there's not 8 co-hosts as it is in the moment, and that's enough, right? But again, John, that ain't the point, man. The point is we're gonna quest with you a little. We're gonna get into some things, right? And first, we're gonna say, dude, like, those are the 3 most basic wishes I think you could have made.
Oh yeah.
I really do.
3 wishes, I can get everything else from it.
Yeah, like out of all the wishes I've seen, because some have been really specific. I had some people were like, that this is trickery. I don't want to answer this question because all this is always flips back on you somehow. And I'd have to look back because there's close to, there's probably 100 questionnaires now, actually. I think there might actually be 100 questionnaires. Jeez. Why, there's 100 questionnaires out. And I think it's only because you made me do one.
What?
I think it's because you convinced me to do it that it's at 100 right now.
Yeah, you're a milestone. You're part of your own show now.
Well, no, because I would have been 80, 82, 80. It's either 100 or 99. It's really, really close. I don't know if I just need to get out and get them. Whatever. We ain't getting into all of that, man. But there is a lot of questionnaires y'all can go check out on the Patreon. Links down in the description, right? As well as a bunch of other things, right? But beyond that basic wish, John, I mean, checked out your books, and I just want to know, like, what got you into writing in the first place, man? Like, what made you suddenly decide to put your foot in that writer's pool?
I've been doing this for forever. I've been reading since I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, and I've always liked reading. And I've started wanting to try to create my own worlds, my own. Two of my favorite writers when I was younger was Harlan Ellison and Isaac Asimov. And not a lot of people kind of don't remember who Harlan was, but he was more of he was labeled a science fiction writer, but he was more of a fantasy writer. And he basically just wrote short stories. I think he's got one novel to his credit, but and in his books, that when he wrote his collections, just with the short stories themselves, he would like write introductions to each story, and sometimes the introductions were longer than the stories. I mean, he would just go crazy. He would talk about his life, how he wrote the story, everything, and I think that was the beginning of when I wanted to start writing, because it showed me what a writer was, and just the other side of it. Asimov does that too. He's more known for his novels, but he wrote a lot of short stories. And in his short story collections, he would do the same thing. He would write introductions to every story and talk about him, why he wrote them, where his life was at that time. And just seeing the human side of those two writers just kind of, made me want to write even more, besides, wanting, reading the stories and reading the comic books and all the other stuff that, kind of sparked my imagination too.
Well, and you can definitely see that influence, I want to point out, in your books with the introductions. It's clear that you took influence from those authors in that, man. And I like that, how you have that introduction where it gives a bit more of a personal touch.
Some of that came from, I don't know if you remember Dave Sim. He did Cerebus back in the day, the Talking Aardvark. He was, he self-published Cerebus, 300 issues of Cerebus. And on the inside front cover of all his books, he would have that, he would talk about, what's going on in his life at the time, or where the book was coming from, or things like that. And I kind of took that specifically from him. I didn't want to just throw something up in the book. I wanted give a little more work for the money, give a little something extra for the money. That's why and I've always been fascinated. I always love the behind the scenes of how somebody created the project or the book or the movie or the TV show. I like that type of that stuff. So I've always liked it. So I figured, well, maybe other people will like it too.
Definitely. I don't know if you guys remember, there was the TV show called Hollywood Story, I think, like back in the 80s or 90s, which was basically like 45 minutes of the behind the scenes of the movies and TV shows. So
yeah, I remember a little about that. Yeah.
So I was always amazed about that, how they were doing things behind the scenes, how they're making the movies and everything. That's fascinating when I was a kid. Similar to like how Harlan and Isaac did.
Yeah.
Can I say, Vlad, if that's the case, man, you really need to check out that episode with Alan Henry, because I don't mean to cut, just, man, like when you're having to be in a suit and it's so hot that your vision starts doing this, and yeah, there's some more interesting stories there too as well. But yeah, I remember that, man, and I do think it's very, I couldn't imagine doing the crap he does. But I think it's very interesting when you add a personal touch. But I'll tell you something else I noticed. So you're very much taking from your life for these stories. Not much is obvious just by the introductions, but it seems you were inspired by a certain vampire slayer. I just realized I was gonna say that starts with V, but then it could be very confusing because there's still two very prominent vampire slayers, and they both start with B. I'm sorry, man. The other one's cooler.
Which one's the other one? Now you've got me confused.
Vlad, two vampire slayers. Two vampires.
About the old one, the first one, the Bram Stoker one.
No. Two characters who are vampire slayers, whose names both start with B.
I know who you're talking about now. I got it.
Well, there is one. We know him. It's cool. He's
Okay.
part of the bigger universe.
Okay, so you did okay. So I was like, why is nobody catching this? Because I guess I'm a fan of Blade too, man. But obviously that's clearly not. You took a lot of inspiration from Buffy, which
Oh yeah, Buffy.
Yeah.
Totally slipped my mind on that one.
Well, Buffy's one of my favorite shows. I think I've got the videos of it, and every 2 or 3 years I just rewatched the entire series again. So I've probably watched it about 5 or 6 times.
Now that's an experience.
wasn't that show fairly long running?
It lasted 5 seasons.
Okay, I could have sworn it was more than that. I'll be sincere. Buffy wasn't my thing. I went with Blade. If
Yeah.
you know what I mean, I was more, like that's just even in the comics and everything. But I mean, nothing against the Buffy, huh?
The comics were not bad. I think Dark Horse published a lot of them.
The Buffy ones?
Yeah.
I mean, I know there are comics. I've seen the TV show, and I never picked up the comics just based on the fact that it wasn't really it wasn't a character that piqued my interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about that character piqued your interest so much? And where within it specifically do you draw the most inspiration?
I don't know. It was very well written. It was very well acted. When it first came out, it's just, just the way the characters talked. They created their own way they talked among themselves. Their little, the way they changed English and changed things around, their little words that they used, and it was just well acted. The actors, Sarah Gellar and Allison Hannigan and the other actors in it, and it really, a lot of the monsters and stuff in it were, metaphors for things that, especially, when they started, they were all teenagers. They were all going to high school. And a lot of that was, things that, they were kind of metaphors for what teenagers were going through at that time. And at the time, I was a lot older than a teenager too. So it really wasn't speaking to me on that level, but it was kind of cool the way the shows were set up. And I really just fell in love with the character, and the storylines, and it just, and I think that's what I picked from it. But I can look back and say anything I picked from it was kind of, I guess, the humanity of the characters, just trying to make characters that seemed real and not just, oh, here's the vampire hunter, the big bad, and a lot of times those are pretty stock characters. And, Buffy was a real person. And, that's what in my book, Alma, between Buffy and my mom, because, my mom's a lot of that character. So kind of those two characters have merged into Alma.
And I do like, man, that. Did you get a chance to look at that, Vlad?
What, the Buffy?
No.
Yeah,
his book, man.
Yeah, I saw something. You sent me.
Where
something, so I checked.
Like you take it from a Cupid to a garden gnome, and then it's with an old and then it's with an old lady hunting monsters.
That's where, one of my biggest writing influences besides, Harlan and Asimov is Steve Gerber, the guy that created Howard the Duck. And all of his books, when he wrote for Marvel, he did Defenders and a bunch of other stuff. And all his books have, like, they can be very deadly serious, but they're always got some type of humor or something, just absurd character in it. And that's where I do a lot of that. I try to do that in my writing. It could be really serious, but I always try to add some humor in it. And, and with, the garden, as being Alma's, sidekick, that was, I was trying to figure out what's the most absurd character I could come up with that, is just really just off the wall. First it was going to be the Cupid, but then I was like, no, that's, I threw him for the previous Slayer, and then I decided to use the garden gnome.
Intriguing choice. So yeah, I mean, it's a very intriguing choice to use the gnome, especially in that sense, right? And I also noticed, like, it seems the books you sent, there's a great variety in the genre, right? So when you're going into something and creating a story, like, what comes about first? Is it the characters, the place you're going to put them, what helps you evolve into where you have the final product as far as within that? Because like I said, I mean, the 3 books you sent me, man, they're pretty far apart as far as genre goes.
Oh yeah. I don't like to stick to one genre. I like to write, whatever catches my attention. But it's the characters I think I come up with first. I have to have the character, and then that character usually kind of decides where, what type of story it's going to be. With Alma, it was pretty easy. That's going to be a horror book. That was going to be, and then with robot sex, it was, I wanted to do science fiction, and I kind of came up with the characters. Actually, I just wanted to do the 2 characters came first, the robot and the woman, Laveau and Barney. And I just created the world off of that. And then when I started it, I was like, I just want this to be the most off the wall science fiction type comic. I just threw anything in it that I could think of, the marching band in the beginning of the first issue, I just, anything I could think of, I was like, I've got dinosaurs in it. I've got flying monkeys, I wanted to just, make it, I figured this was going to be my one big shot at a science fiction epic. I was throwing everything I could think of into it. Originally, it was kind of weird because it originally was supposed to only be 1 issue. I wanted to do some standalone issues because, it takes me so long to get issues out, between, all the stuff I'm writing and then trying to, pay for everything. It's hard to get a lot of issues out. So I was like, let me do some standalone issues where I don't have to say, oh, the next issue is coming out when I can get to it. And when I started it, once I got to a certain point, I realized, okay, I'm either going to have to just make this a bigger book or split it. And I thought, well, let me do another issue. But then I thought, oh, it's going to be 2 issues. And then I started getting further into it. I was like, no, I said, this is going to be a continuing series because I've got this thing could last for forever. As far as I kind of call it my saga, even though it's nothing like Saga. And I'm not comparing myself to Brian Vaughn. It's kind of it's going to be this big epic storyline that, that if I can get it, done, it could last for, 5 or 6 years.
I feel like in going through it too, it had a bit of a influence from a certain guide. The one for hitchhikers.
I shouldn't admit this, but I've never read it.
The movie is not bad, actually.
Yeah.
I think there is a comic book, one from the 80s, I think.
Yeah, I've
Wait,
actually got the
everybody,
book at home, I've never read it yet.
Did you just say there's a comic, Vlad?
I think. I'm not sure. Might have to Google.
Oh,
There
wait,
is.
I didn't have
Okay, you have it.
I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do that. Do you not know who Douglas Adams is, Vlad?
I know I read the book and I saw the movie.
Okay. I don't think there's a comic. I thought you were saying that there was just a comic for a minute and you weren't aware of Douglas Adams.
I said, I think there might be a comic book as well. No?
I don't know. I would have to go to Google, and I suppose
I think they made a video game in the 80s, almost text video game. Let me check.
No, ask a question, Vlad.
Okay. Well, I know who Douglas Adams is, and
yeah, I know who he is, and I've actually got a copy of the book. I just haven't had it, gotten around to reading it yet.
It's not a bad read. It's a nice, hilarious one.
Yeah.
I think they did Robot pretty well in the movie, actually.
but you have the book, and you.
Yes, I have the book somewhere. I have a lot of books. I buy a lot of books, and sometimes I think the main reason I haven't got I missed it when it first came out or when it first started, and it's gotten to be such a big book now. I'm kind of I'm afraid to go to read it, and I'm going to be disappointed because everybody says it's such a great book.
Have you watched the movie?
No.
It's definitely an experience. It's definitely an experience.
And I
Both
love
movie
that
and,
film.
and
I'd turn it on right now if I could, but you know they would probably call us for copyright fairly quickly because I don't think they'd like me just playing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, it's fully something I
also,
could do, but it would get this
audiobook is
episode
not
pulled.
bad experience.
Huh?
Also, as an audiobook, it's not such a bad experience as well. You know, you can
But-
go on hiking and listen to Hitchhiker's Guide while out there in nature.
But Vlad, now you've like made me want to get this comic because I didn't know there was a Hitchhiker's Galaxy with a guide comic.
I'm not sure.
No, there's
we
3
have to-
issues.
I think there is.
No, there's
Because I think they made a video game as well.
there's 3 issues. I'm not Googling that, man. I'll do it later. But I just had to know about the comic because that bloody well amazes me. But I can't believe you've never read that, John. Just like I said, based on reading Sex Robots. Like I feel like there was some influence from that book. But now you tell me you've never read the book, you've never watched the movie, you've not consumed that in any way, shape, or form. Vlad asked a
Unless somebody may
question.
have told
I'm
me something
disappointed.
about it, because it's become such a big thing. That maybe somebody said something to me and it seeped into my subconscious or something.
I will tell you, in my personal opinion, based on everything that you said that you've read and based on what I've read from you, I would recommend that as reading. I think it's an excellent book. I have the real thick, like it's all 4 books edition. That's like
Yeah,
I don't know how many pages, you know. But I would definitely recommend that book for reading, John. If nothing more than it's something that could inspire you to do other things that you may not have within your works. I mean, don't you know what I mean? As far as just with everything, like, look, dude, a depressed robot. How funny is that?
yeah, yeah.
Although,
I'll dig the book. Like I said, I have it on my bookshelf. I'll just get it. I'm going to give it a shot. I think I've held off because you know how sometimes some things are built up so big that when you finally watch them, it's hard to live up to the hype. And I don't want to be disappointed because so many people that I know love that book so much.
The Alien versus Predator film destroyed me. So yes, I understand. Did man.
same. Also, the sex robots reminds me a little bit about kind of like those stories from Heavy Metal magazine from the 80s. There is that peculiar one story from the movie from 1981 about robots in space and everything. Like they get high and do a bunch of stuff and kidnap some woman and they go and have fun in space. So that kind of reminded me.
Yeah, that could have been some of because I used to get heavy metal back years and years ago, so that might have had some influence on it for sure.
I think that was like 78, 79.
Yeah, that was probably when I was getting it. Yeah, I think I had a subscription to it, and I got it in the mail, so I was reading it for a couple of years. I read it fairly regular.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Just with the stuff you said you've read. Okay, have you read anything by Douglas Adams, man?
Nope.
I'm gonna stop
There's
picking
still
on.
time.
I'm gonna stop picking on you about it, man.
That's
I
not
am.
such a bad thing, actually. Well, like discovering that kind of work later in life, like that's kind of like revelation when like the very much of novelty like disappears from life. Then you get something like that and like discover it. That's also a nice experience as well.
Oh yeah, because I mean it's hard to find writers nowadays. Sometimes that I get that excited about. So hopefully I'll read it and it'll make me really want to read the next the books.
I mean, and you're certainly, if you enjoy his writing, you can go pick up the books he's made, but you're certainly not getting anything new. I will. You really now? Are you referring when you say writers? Are you referring strictly to books when you say that?
Almost a lot of things really. Books, comics, movies, music. Sometimes it's like like certain people that I like in music. It's that I used to like wait so anxiously to, for their new album or their new CD or whatever you want to call it, and then now it's like, I'll like some of this stuff, but I don't feel like some of that excitement that I used to when I was, younger. It was like, oh, this is the greatest thing since, ever. It's like, I'll pick it up and it'll be like, oh, this is a good album, but it, and not that I don't get excited about it, but sometimes it's just not that excitement that it used to be.
I mean, I would think that's fairly typical in aging. Would you agree, Vlad?
Yeah.
Really?
It is.
Well, I think it is,
Also-
because I'm getting very old. So, I know it's harder to, for some of this, it's harder to find some of that stuff that has that same reaction when you're younger, because when you're younger, it's the first time you've heard that or read some of that. And now it's, so many people are influenced by this person and that person, it's hard to find something really original or that original that just really just like blows your socks off or something.
I mean, that makes sense, man. I mean, I've got a very young kid, and I was talking about today, like he kind of scraped his elbow a little, and I was talking about, I ramped a bike and like had jacked my elbow up, and I was talking about how I ramped a bike. He was amazed at the fact that I had taken a bike off a ramp, like the monster trucks. I was like, well, not as big, buddy, but yeah, I did ramp a little bike, and
Yeah.
he's amazed at that. So I think it's a thing of the more you consume in life, the harder it is to get that, because you've already had variations of it to a certain degree, because art influences art, and it always has. You know what I mean? I mean, that's why, again, I love Deadpool Kills Everything, because I think it's funny. It's a book where he's going back, and he's literally like, because he killed him off at university, killed this, blah, 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 everything. But now he's like, fine. If I really want to get to just the really and get rid of everything, I have to go kill Sherlock and Ahab and the things that influenced all the stuff that came later. So I think that's interesting, and I think we as humans, once we grow older, we do, and we get jaded. I don't think there's a way you can stop becoming a certain degree jaded with age, especially if you consume entertainment towards entertainment specifically.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mean just jaded towards life, but
Also, there is one more thing that we have to consider on this. And that is the other side of the business. We are the one who are making this entertainment. So you kind of know ins and outs of the business and everything. So there's that factor as well.
I mean that's true, Vlad. When you get into doing things like this and you get behind the curtain, whether it's and to any degree in any entertainment, whether you're doing something in film and TV and music, comics, books, once you get behind that veil a little bit, I think it does change your perspective of it, and I don't think that can be helped. I mean, I know with me doing music, I got behind that curtain, and well, go watch when Vlad questions me. You can check that out on Patreon. He's laughing because he knows a lot of the thoughts that just went through my head.
Oh yeah.
But it's not to say that I still don't get excited about new books and movies and stuff like that. Like when a new issue of Saga, comes out, I can't wait to read that. So I mean, it's still, there's some of that excitement there, but it's not like back in the day when Bendis was writing Daredevil. I used to sit in my car before I'd go home when I'd pick up the new issue, and I'd read the new issue right then. I couldn't wait till I got home. I wanted to read it right then. And as much as I like Saga and some other books, I could wait till I get home at least. I'm not like reading them in the parking lot.
I don't have time to do that, so whatever, John. But I'm curious with the Daredevil, man. Are you hyped for Born Again?
Oh yeah. I enjoyed the Netflix series. Daredevil was like the first Marvel comic that I collected. I started with Daredevil 50. It was Barry Smith was drawing it at the time. He only drew a couple issues of it, and it was back during his Jack Kirby influence days. He was drawing it like his style was nothing like his style now. It was very Jack Kirby-ish, and it was probably Daredevil 50, or it was either 49 or 50. I think it was 49. It's probably one of the worst Daredevil issues ever. The villain in it was Star Saxon, which nobody even knows who that is anymore. But something about Daredevil kind of just caught my attention, and that was the first Marvel comic I read. And then it's like, once Frank Miller took over, and then Brian Bendis and Ed Brubaker. I mean, Daredevil's become like a focal point for like a lot of big writers taking over and doing some really cool things with it.
Very true. Yeah. And I think that's a weird balance that Marvel has to maintain. Though I would hate to be the guy running Marvel trying to balance all those characters.
Oh yeah.
It made my skull hurt a little thinking about that, Vlad. You've seen that happen, man. I mean, it's hard enough. It's hard enough balancing creators to bring on the show. I could only imagine balancing all the books and everything like that, and to the degree that like the Tom Brevoort does with the current X-Men run. It would.
Well, it's an expanding universe, so it grows by the year it's being produced. So Marvel is now what, 60 years old?
I don't know how they keep up with it though, because I can't pick up a Marvel comic and read most of them now because I don't understand. There's so much, the continuity is so tied up, especially like X-Men. I tried to pick up X-Men when Hickman took over because I hadn't read X-Men in years, and I gave up after I think 1 or 2 issues. I was like, I don't know who half these characters are. I don't know what's going on. I just, there's so much going on in Marvel comics now. It's hard to pick up and just read an issue.
I think they're kind of rebooting now with the 3 new shows. I think 3 new series. I think that's been announced now.
The what is it? It's the Fall of X, I believe, series.
I think
they're
all. It's all coming after the Fall of X. That's like Gail Simone's taking over one of them. Yeah, they've got 3 big ones. I may give that a try because it looks like they may be trying to start without a lot of the back, story. I mean, it's still there, but I think they're trying to get a fresh start with it.
Well, and I've talked slightly about that with Dave. I know ostensibly they're, from what I understand, they're pretty much like going after Orcus, I think is the name of the organization within the comic.
Yeah.
They're like they're the anti-mutant, we're gonna kill you all group within there right now, and the mutants are very much like Scott Summers is like, dude, I will blast you. I will, like, you're part of that. There is no hesitation. Like, they're not holding Wolverine back at these people anymore. They're just like, okay, Logan, go, do your thing. You know what I mean? They're not telling him to stop.
He's the guy to do the thing. I mean, he was always the guy to do the thing.
But they got everybody in the X-Men doing the thing now towards those people, and imagine like how terrifying that is. Like if the entirety of the mutant populace suddenly decided, okay, you see this one group, yeah, we're gonna make them go away, and because what do you do at that moment? It's too big of a force. They're gonna go away unless for some reason, like every other superhero within the Marvel universe, suddenly decided to fight them over that fact and make them stop. Otherwise, if that's not the case, it's very much. But I do get your point as far as everything being convoluted, man. Because I think I recently tried to pick up I did pick up a graphic novel at the library that's right after King in Black, the Venom storyline, and it was a Venom book. And yeah, I got about 2 issues in, and I was just like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm gonna set this over here, and we'll go read something else, because it's gotten to the point where if you want to read those books and you're jumping in, depending on where you're jumping in, not to say there are books out there that you can go grab that are Marvel books that you can read them. Like Bishop War College was a great standalone series that I think was well done. I've been enjoying Cable by Fabian so far. But a lot of it, especially like if you look at like the Spider-Man books that they have going, the X-Men books they have going.
I will say the Ultimate Spider-Man has been, I picked that up and I'm actually really enjoying that.
That's the book I'm so annoyed I didn't add to my pool list because it sold like and was gone. And I haven't, and then the price for issue 1 went really high, really quickly. It hit on that collectible note, and I just wanted to bloody well read it. It's not something I've been able to get a hold of since that, man. So, but I think that's something that they are doing with the Ultimate Universe. As far as because they've got Black Panther, X-Men, and Spider-Man, and they're trying to give an initial endpoint with the Ultimate Universe, like they did with the Ultimate Universe previously when they did it.
Yeah.
Except if you read Ultimate Invasion, you better know some things. Yeah.
So I didn't get any of. I thought the original Ultimate Universe I read when it first came out, but then it started to get just as confusing as the Marvel Universe towards the end. And then when they had the Ultimate Invasion and all these other Ultimate things, I just I never picked those up. So
well, the Ultimate
in the new Ultimate Spider-Man, they don't. I mean, I know they're talking about the evil Reed Richards and Iron Man, and I'm hoping those don't get so involved in it that it starts making it really confusing.
Hydra Captain America.
Hey man, I don't like him. He did my boy dirty. All right, he did. Like Evil Cap, even Stevel, as he calls him. I love the fact.
Good storyline, actually.
Huh?
I like that one.
I do.
That one.
It's a good story. I just don't like that he got to do my boy dirty. You know what I mean? Like he did. Stevel, and I love that Deadpool calls him Stevel. Like I think that's hilarious to me. But he did Deadpool really, 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 really dirty, man, and made it to where like here's Deadpool in this great situation, and now everyone hates him. So I don't like that character, even though technically it's a good story arc. Like I love the story arc as far as within Deadpool, and I think it's great for the character. It's just like, couldn't he have just been okay for once and not got the bone? Like you always got to give Deadpool the bone, man. Like every time he does something good, and then just
D-Man is that kind of a character, so
I know that's why I relate to him, Vlad. But that's neither here nor there, right? He did, man. But yeah, no, the ultimate comic, man. If it doesn't start to get to the degree where it's spread out like that, I would be amazed. So I take it you would never want to get into writing that kind of an event, John. Never want to have your hand in a huge.
I'll never say never because it's Marvel Comics. If Marvel Comics gave me a chance to write, I'll do my homework. I'll figure it out somehow. Because I grew up with Marvel Comics. That was I may not read a lot of it now, but I think it's not geared towards me. It's geared for other readers. I don't really I'll pick it up now and then, but that doesn't mean that I think it's bad or that I wouldn't want to write it. If they came and said, hey, you can write X-Men or you could write Spider-Man right now, I'm like, I'm there. I just can't see saying no to an opportunity like that. And plus I don't think it will ever happen, but I could do my homework. I'd go out and buy like all the epic the trades of it, and I'd probably spend more than I'd ever make because I'd be buying everything just to read get the history of it. But that's something I couldn't say no to because I grew up Marvel Comics was for a while I was one of those Marvel fanboys that's all I read was Marvel. Anything else, no, I don't want to read that. Just Marvel Comics.
So, what do you find yourself picking up when you go to the store more than anything nowadays? I mean, you said Saga.
What's the furthest place from here? By Matthew Rosenberg from Image. I couldn't even explain what this book comic is about. It is just it's a science fiction comic, but it is so good. That's probably like my favorite thing to read right now. But I like to just try and pick up mostly indie books. The one that you were reading at the beginning, I forgot what the name of it was.
Man's Best. Whoa.
Yeah. Man's Best. I picked up the Ashcan, so I definitely want to pick up the first issue. Tom King. I'm a big Tom King fan. So I've picked up what was it, Helen of Windheim or Windherm and Animal Farm, and I'm reading his Wonder Woman.
No, hey, wait. I don't. You said Animal Farm. It's Animal Pound.
Animal Pound.
I just,
I'm sorry.
I understand why you've said Animal Farm though, because I've read the first 2 issues.
Oh yeah.
And Tom is killing that. Like I
Oh, yeah.
really, really, really am digging Animal Farm. All right,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got me doing it, man. Animal Pound. Like I'm very
Yeah.
intrigued as to where it's gonna go.
Yeah, well, he's he's very upfront about that. He's basically rewriting Animal Farm as a modern comic, so with the dogs and the cats and the rabbits and stuff. So yeah, that's been really, I thought that's been really interesting. Trying to think what else. And I just, I picked up Tim Seeley's Local Man. I'm more towards the indies, Image, some of those, but I try to read I'll try and pick up some Marvel or DC, especially if it's something new.
You said it, so I have to say it because yes, Local Man by Tim Seeley and Tony Fleece has been phenomenal. I wish I could, off the top of my head, think everybody that else is on that book, but I want to point out you can check out Tony Fleece's Quest on season 1, and we will be kicking off season 3. And season 2 is going to be way shorter than season 1, y'all. We'll be kicking off season 3 with none other than Tim Seeley. And then Tony Fleece will come along a little bit later as well to come on back on here to Quest with us once again. I'm very much looking forward to those 2 things because, yeah, what they're doing with Local Man, I think it's very unique and it's very, very, very intriguing. Who do you find yourself most inspired by within the comic book industry? I mean, you've named several writers, but none of them were writers of comics.
Probably, like I said, Steve Gerber. That's going back a ways. Creating, Howard the Duck. Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis. I never got out of comics completely, but for a while there, I was only buying maybe 3 or 4 indie comics. I was buying like Cerebus. I think Bone was being published at the time. A few like that, and then that's when Bendis was working on Daredevil, and I had read somewhere about it, so I picked it up. I think he was already like 3 or 4 issues in his run, and I picked it up, and he actually brought me back into like superhero comics, because from Daredevil, it kind of brought me back into reading more comics, because Bendis, his dialogue is just really so good. Now, he's hit and miss with me a lot lately. Some of his newer stuff I haven't been as interested in. Now, his newest book, Masterpiece, is really good, but Bendis is always, at least he's entertaining, and like I said, his when he used to write the Avengers, I sometimes I wished he had just written an issue of the Avengers where they sat around and talked. I didn't even need the fighting or anything because his dialogue among the characters I thought was just so good.
Yeah, he did that a lot. I think like 15 years ago or something like that. He brought a lot of innovation in storytelling. He put a lot of that mundane and decompressing comic books.
Yeah.
So he basically laid a lot of bricks and paved the road for a lot of contemporary writers right now. And stories that we are reading and creating as well. So he did a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, Tom King's another one. Usually, almost anything Tom King writes, I'll read too. So he's another one of the newer writers that I'm very interested in, that I like. Matthew Rosenberg, which I mentioned, writing What's the Furthest Place from Here. And I'll just pick up an issue of something now and then. I'll say, oh, is this, and then I may continue with it, and sometimes I may only read an issue or two and not follow it.
When you're walking through your local store, man, what is it that makes you pick up that first issue of something?
Sometimes it's the title, if the title might reach out to grab me more, or the cover. A lot of times it's hard to see the cover because the way they rack the comic, all you see usually is the title of the comic. So it's probably the title. It's either the title, or if I know the name of the writer, that's working on the book. Like I said, I'll give a lot of books a shot, just if I really like the writer. So a lot of times it's probably more the writer. Sometimes if the title is interesting, I may pick it up and flip through it, and if it looks halfway interesting, I'll give it a try.
You ever feel like when
Yeah.
you're walking into a store, there's just too much and it throws off what you want to buy out of curiosity? Because I mean, obviously, someone that's
I'm actually the opposite. I feel like there's so many comics that comic shops can't afford to put everything out anymore. And especially the ones that get the short end of the stick are the indies, the ones that they put out every Marvel and they put out every DC and they'll put out every Image, and then usually they'll do Boom and some of those, but by the time you get to some of the smaller guys, you're lucky sometimes if they're there. I'm lucky the shop that I deal with is pretty good. They have a pretty good selection, but they still can't put everything out. And it's, you can't blame them because they go out of business. If they put every comic out there and nobody bought half of them, they go out of business so quick.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting point, Vlad. I thought you were going to say more. Stop throwing me off. You
Yeah.
say,
I wanted, but
huh?
thoughts left me. Go ahead.
You wanted to, but it left you. What are you drinking, Vlad?
My thought left me. Yeah, it might come back.
I said, what are you
Well,
drinking?
I was thinking about personal preference of the comic book shop owners.
I said drinking.
Oh, what I'm drinking? I'm drinking water.
That did not look like water earlier. I swear, I'm gonna have to review this tape, Vlad. I don't think it's been water.
No, it's water.
All right, just checking. What do you? I mean,
Elixir of life.
you make a valid point as far as the preference of the comic book owners, man. I think that can probably reflect. I don't know though. I mean, any intelligent comic book owner or comic shop owner, I think is.
Then again, we have to see, we have to look at that from the bigger perspective because it's a global distribution across 50 states. So demographics are different, and people in different states like different things. So it's a mix, depending on some states. Maybe there's a trend, I don't know, in Wyoming where people want fantasy, or in North Carolina where they want science fiction, and then across country you have different stories doing better. So that's something that I think about when I'm working my comics for the publisher. So how they're going to resonate across the country.
I mean, that's definitely true because I would think what's popular in New York is not going to be popular in a very small suburban town to the same degree. I would think they would differ, man. You ever put any thought into that, John, as far as when you're excuse me, when you're writing your books, just the specific demographic you're dealing with the local area that you're in? And just out of curiosity, say you go to your local comic shop, what do they carry your books, or have you talked about that back and forth with them, or do you even have wants to get your book within a shop? Because I know we've had that.
A couple of the local shops here do carry my books. The one that I shop at does. One of the things that I also, with comic shops, we've actually had 2 comic shops locally, and the one that I used to deal with, they don't rack any new comics anymore. If you want to buy comics, you have to you go into their shop, you get the Diamond catalog or Lunar or whatever the distributors are now, and you have to go into them and you say, oh, I want this Spider-Man, I want this Daredevil, I want this Batman, and they order it and they'll hold it in their pull list. But when you go in, there's no comics on the rack anymore. They don't carry any new comics. They just deal with whatever people want. And to me, I had to go to a different shop because I have a few comics that I do a pull list for that I know I want to keep reading, but I like shopping the rack. I like finding new comics. I might read Batman for 5 issues depending on the writer, or things like that, but I don't want to put it on pull list because by the time I turn around, it's a new writer and I don't want to read any more of it. So but we've had at least 2 or 3 shops in this, and I'm close to New Orleans, in this area, that basically all they carry comics if you order them through them, but they don't have anything you can't just go in and say, oh, I want to pick up this off the rack.
Do they carry graphic novels?
Some old stuff. They carry some old comics. They've got a selection of old comics, and they're also they carry toys and things like that. So that's where I think they're making their money off, is toys and Pokemon cards and You know, they don't just carry. They never just carry comics, and they just said it was they just were losing money on the comics, and then especially when everybody left Diamond, and they were saying like they would get a comic. Diamond would send them a comic, like they'd send them their order, and if they missed a couple comics, Diamond would send like maybe 2 comics to them, and the shipping on that was more than than they could make on the comics if they sold it. So they just decide. I mean, to me though, it's kind of, you're not going to get new readers in or new people to read comics, because when you walk in there, if you can't see the comics, you're not going to, oh, let me just order them and see them 3 months from now or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a pretty hard sell. It really is, man. It also makes me happy to know, and having conversation with local comic owner around here, man, that his bread and butter is comics. And when he told me that, I won't lie, I was like, that's what's up,
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, they sell.
The shop I deal with here, that's basically, I mean, they may have I don't even think they have toys, but 99% where they sell is comic books. They have a pretty good old selection of old comics, but they have a big wall that they put all the new comics. They started off with whatever came in for that week, and then they go into like DC, Marvel, Image, and then indies, and they have a pretty good wall of stuff up there, which is nice. And then they've got like graphic novels and all of that. But I like to shop. I don't want to just go in and say, okay, just give me my whatever I have in my file, because a lot of times I may have one comic in my file. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go look at the wall and find something else.
I don't like to shop. Because I spend too much when I'm in the shop that I go to.
Well, yeah.
There's just too much there, and I'm like, oh, that looks good. That looks good. Oh, that looks good.
Well, there is that problem.
Yeah, but my local comic shop, I mean, they carry a good chunk of things. I mean, I highly recommend Mage's Comics and Games up there in Indy. It's very well stocked. You can meet Dave even if you're a fan of the show. I know you can catch him up there quite a bit at the time when the shop's open. You can get your Magic cards, you can get your pops, all kinds of action figure. But yeah, their main trade is selling comics, and they keep a good bundle of them. I'm curious though, in what you've just said, as far as you've got these shops pulling comics and everybody, do you think the fact that there's this huge independent market on Kickstarter has affected that? Because I mean, there's so many comics you can get on Kickstarter that you better get them on Kickstarter if you want them.
Yeah, because a lot of Kickstarter, I mean, when I scroll through Kickstarter, there's probably 90% of those comics you're never going to see at a comic shop. They're just, it's like Kickstarter is its own big comic book store, and you just go on there and find comics, and I'm sure a lot of people, that's how they read that stuff off of Kickstarter now. And I don't know how much of those people still go and buy comics from the comic shop, but Kickstarter, I think, is changing the whole structure of how comics are made, in a sense, or sold.
Yeah, it's its own distribution system in a way.
Yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily changing the market as a whole, though. It's just making another spot in the market that's available for you know what I mean. But I don't think it could ever. I don't think I could never see the kickstarting side of comic books have a serious effect on Marvel or DC, ostensibly, or even Image for that matter, or like any of the, I mean, Boom, Dynamite. I don't think, and I mean, some of these companies actually literally use Kickstarters for when they're putting out big collections and this and that. You can see Kickstarters from, I'm pretty sure, all the companies I just named except 2 of them. I would really have to go double check. Like, I know I seen Top Cow running a Kickstarter for the Darkness Volume 3 Compendium. Yeah. So, I mean, you've got companies that big using that. But I think it's also handy because then you're able to reach the direct market. You know the amount you have to print. You're not ending up over-printing books. Because, look, Disney and Warner Brothers don't care. As long as they have their stories for their movies, I really think, as far as at a corporate level, that's probably their main concern.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm talking about the
CEO. I mean, the editors and the people who are working do
care. No. That's why I said the CEOs of those 2 companies. No, I'm not talking like the people that are at the level of making comics. Yeah, I'm sure they care greatly. It's very obvious in a lot of the stuff that's turned out. I mean, like We've had people from both those companies. We've got people coming up from both of those companies. And I know they put care into the comics. But the people that are at the level that they never talk to, that, you know, Robert Downey Jr. don't even talk to, those people, they don't care. I'm pretty sure they're more focused on the comics as far as to have stories for the films, because that's where they see the $1 billion paycheck, and that's what those individuals are looking for. You know what I mean? They're not getting, and they don't. Sadly, they don't look at the comic market to be what it could be if it was properly pushed. I mean, that's just a whole opinion.
Yeah, there's only one small problem that was evident for the past 10 years, and that was the thing that people who watched movies, superhero movies in particular, weren't necessarily buying and reading comic books.
And that's
the sales haven't picked up because Avengers made $1 billion.
And that's the funny thing, and I pointed to this, and I want to know your opinion on this, John. As someone that's read comics for a while, you read books and all this. Look, when Game of Thrones came out, more people went and bought that book, right? When Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came out, they reprinted that book, and a bunch of them got bought up, right? Why does it not work the same way for comics?
Because I think the movies and the comics are so far apart in a lot of ways. You know, I mean, the movie doesn't follow any strict storyline in a comic. You can't go in the comic and say, "Oh, let me read the comic that, you know, the new Batman movie was based on." You know, that's, I mean, a lot of times they'll make an adaptation for it, but I don't think, you know, part of it falls back into how confusing or how you know, that the comics are. You know, you can't just go in, you know, somebody off the street going in and picking up a new X-Men book because the new X-Men movie's out is going to be completely lost. Even Batman, if they go and pick up a new Batman movie, a lot of, you know, what's going on, they're going to be like, well, this isn't like the Batman in the movie, or this isn't the Batman that I remember. I think you know, you pick up Hitchhiker's Guide to the, now I know all the times the movies and the books don't. A lot of times, you know, the movie will take the book and just basically take the title, but a lot of times, you know, you can read the book and say, oh, that's where I see the movie came from.
You can see, like look, I'll bring up 3 films in particular. The Hitchhiker's Guide, Starship Troopers, and oh, my brain's really just flashing on the other one, and I can't think of it, and I had it in my brain a second ago, and oh no, one a TV series, Game of Thrones. If you go and you watch those and then you read them, there is a great chunk of difference between all of them. You can see where one inspired the other. In all cases, I personally would say that the literary piece was better, because in all those 3 cases I've both read and watched. But I wouldn't say that in any way, shape, or form they were a direct adaptation. Like, dude, if you read, look, if they directly adapted Game of Thrones, and I brought this up when we were talking on the PanCon here recently, the series would still be going. All right. Because there's so much more there. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they did some things in the film that are very much not in the book. The Starship Troopers, I can't lie. Like, I loved that movie. I loved that book. And when I first seen the movie, I was too young to understand the satire within it, and I bloody well hated it. I love that movie now because I'm old enough to truly understand all the satire within it. You know what I mean? But when I initially seen it, when it came out, I was pretty young, and I loved the book as a science fiction book. And yeah, the satire went right over my head, you know, when I was younger. So I didn't enjoy the film at all. I'll go watch that thing right now, though. Nowadays, you know, just to clarify. But I know, man, there's always a big separation. Like, if you, I think a perfect example of somebody enjoying like, if you enjoy the Marvel films, if you look at Civil War, like Captain America Civil War, and you go, that's awesome. Go read Civil War. You know, you will enjoy it. It's not like and I just mean, go grab the graphic novel. That's the 7 issues of Civil War. You don't have to go grab the tie-ins that would be a stack this thick, you know. But if, like, you like 2 or 3 certain characters, go grab those tie-ins too, and you could read all that. And I don't think it would be so convoluted that it's not something you couldn't understand.
That's true to an extent, I think. I think though another part of the reason may be is when like Games of Thrones comes out, you see Games of Thrones books in every bookstore. You know, there's not that many comic book stores for people to, you know, to go find the comic books. And you know, and I don't think they push the comics all as much, you know, when the movies come out.
There is that.
He made a valid point, Vlad, and I don't like it.
Well, it's true, but also here's the thing. The point is, like, when Game of Thrones came out, it was heavily advertised as a book adaptation. So people knew that's a book. Okay, I want to read it. So they went and pick up, you know, book 1, book 2, whatever. And also fantasy as a genre is the biggest fiction genre, way bigger than comic books. And when the movies came out, movies were like, you know, just movies. They weren't, you know, advertised as this is the Civil War comic book adaptation. They were advertised like Armageddon and, you know, action, any other kind of action movie. They were advertised as movies with superhero powers, like, you know. So people weren't necessarily known to, you know, they knew that they were accustomed with characters. Everybody knows Captain America, Spider-Man, Hulk, Thor, and everybody else. But that's the level they know. So they're accustomed to characters, but they don't know specific comics, because there's, like, you know, Captain America 757-A Hollywood special #3. So who's going to cover that? And with fantasy books, there is only, like, you know, Game of Thrones has 5 books. Hitchhiker Guide had 1 book. Starship Troopers was 1 book, and they were all before the TV shows. And something interesting is that, you know, like, people who love fantasy, they love fantasy in any kind of medium, whether it's a book, a movie, a video game, or a comic. So they are more prone to reading than people who just go and see superhero movie.
Also, too, I think books are a little more. People will say, "I'll go read a book," but some people, like, you know, read a comic book. I'm not reading a comic book. That's for kids. Or, you know, I haven't read a comic book since I was, you know, a kid or whatever. It's a little more, you know, easier or more acceptable for, like, hey, I go to the bookstore and I'll pick up the book and read it. But, you know, I think there's still some of that too.
I would unfortunately definitely agree with you, John. I think you're completely right within that. I mean, that's why we're getting ready to have a PanCon over here pretty soon, and all the PanCons are available on the Patreon for anybody that wants to check it out. There's a 7-day free trial. It's only $1 a month, man. Pre-show questionnaires, Vlad questioning me and getting into some questionable things as far as the hip hop side of things that I do. You know, but we're gonna have a PanCon about not safe for work comics. And that's why I think it's funny. People think it's for kids. Look, I could sit here, like, we've had so many creators on, and look, if you just want to walk your kid into a comic book store because you just want to try and get your kid to read something, you figure that might work, and you're not paying attention to what your kid picks up, and the clerk just doesn't care and lets you take it, well, you could end up with your kid reading something out like Crossed, which would be a problem. No child should read Garth Ennis's Crossed. It crosses so many lines. So many lines. I think it crosses every line, if I'm going to be honest. And, like, look, I love Garth Ennis's work. Crossed is awesome. I've read it. I would reread it if I had the bloody time, but I'm trying to read the comics that I haven't read, but that's neither here nor there. But it's definitely not something I think you should read before you're, like, I don't know, 16, I would say. Maybe 15, but
maybe older.
Yeah, maybe older. I mean, it like I said, it crosses.
Go maybe more for like 18.
Yeah, see, look, you're like 18. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, because it's pretty rough. So I think people need to be aware of that. The comics, look, comics are for everyone. Not every comic is for everyone. You can find a comic regardless, that you will enjoy if you go about looking and take some time, or even just talk to people that know comic books. But you did make a valid point, though, Vlad. They should have been like, this is based on Civil War. It probably would have increased the sales of Civil War. But hey, man, you can still get graphic novels in it. Most, like Barnes and Noble and Books a Million and such like that. Even though my local Books a Million graphic novels sucks with their
But
graphic novels.
even
Like,
the Barnes and Noble, there's like 3 of them locally here that I go to, and the graphic novel section now is like 4 feet wide. It used to be like really big, and it just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Now it's like 4 feet wide, and the manga section is about 20 feet wide, but so there's a very limited, they carry like Sandman, they carry, it's like all of them have the same books almost in each store. It's the ones that are the evergreen titles from from the bigger companies.
well, I mean, and I think that's completely understandable. So I want to know, John, what got you to start your own company? What made you? Because I mean, Die Hard Comics, man. I know. Look, I know for a fact. Wait, Die Bold, not Die Hard.
Die
My
Bold.
bad.
Die Bold,
You-
yeah.
Everybody is screwing up saying the names of things over here. Animal Farm,
Yeah.
whatever, right? But yeah, Die Bold Comics. Like, what made you decide to actually start an imprint like that, as opposed to just trying to put your comics out without doing that?
Well, when I came back, I wrote like, during the the 80s and the 90s, I got published by like Fantagraphics and Innovation and a bunch of the smaller, indie publishers. Then I kind of took a break about, for maybe about 5 years, and then really write too many comics. When I came back, I started, self-publishing, and probably for years, I don't even know how many years, I self-published without an imprint. I just basically just put them out. There was no imprint on it. But then, the more I thought about it, the more you read, you've got to have a brand. You've got to have some type of, everything's got to be branded. And it was like, and it was kind of hard that, somebody sees this book that's I've got one book that's actually called Die Bold Comics, and it's about a talking head, and it's more of a humorous fantasy story, as opposed to, Alma, which is a, straight drop horror story. So, there's no connection. So I needed something that, I needed to brand myself. And I just decided to come up with, a name. And after a lot of thinking about it, I just thought Die Bold Comics was a pretty cool name for a publisher.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Yeah.
I like it. Vlad, you got something on deck?
On deck, let me see.
Like a question,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Well, I have a question about the imprint. So did you saw the change before and after you made a company? How did that affect your comic books and connecting people with you? So when they go out and say, okay, that's Die Bold Comics, so they know what to expect, and kind of like
I think kind of let some people, most of my comics I sell at conventions. I don't really, I do some online sales. So, I think it helped because, I've got a cool logo now. I've got a tablecloth with the logo with the skull on it and the name. I've got a poster. So I think that helps to, attract people over, and, and it just, when they look at everything, they know everything on the table is, published under one company in a sense. So I don't know if it really moved the needle too much on what I sold as opposed to before. But I think it made it a little easier for people to kind of know, okay, you're the Die Bold guy, when they see me at conventions and stuff, they kind of know what I've got than, not having an imprint or whatever. So I think the bigger it gets, the more important it is to have an imprint, because otherwise I just got like 2 or 3 dozen comics with just no imprint, and nobody knows how they're connected, unless they actually just see my name in it somewhere. So it kind of at least ties everything together. It makes it easier for me, if nothing, I think. So
yeah, I was thinking about it. Yeah.
and everybody likes the logo. I've got the logo, and I got the skull that I use as like kind of my mascot that really looks cool. So I've actually I make some t-shirts, and I've got a t-shirt with just the skull on it, and that t-shirt sells irregardless of the comic books, because it's a cool looking image. I've had people not even anything with comics see it, and they'll walk up to, oh, I want that t-shirt, just because it's the skull on it. It's It's not like they have to, you know, oh, this is a comic that nobody's ever read or anything. They just walk around with this big, you know, cool looking skull on their shirt.
That's cool.
I mean, that's definitely, yeah. It's nice to have that marketability. Like, hopefully, if I've done my due diligence, by the time this is dropped, you can also go pick up a questionnaire shirt with that nice new logo by Andrew Thomas. Hopefully, I've gotten everything done that I needed to do, and that's fully available. But it should be. I don't think I've done it before, so it won't be that difficult. But yeah, that nice new logo. Pick yourself up a shirt, as well as make sure you go check out John, man. There's links in the description. You get to all of his stuff. It's been a pleasure, John. It really has. But this is the end of the show, so I have to give the everyone out there a couple options. This is how we do, right? So I want to let you all know out there, if you've enjoyed this interview, right? And you're just like, John, man, gentleman's a pleasure, right? What I want you to do is I want you to send him just a big old Cyclops, like a chill one, though. Make sure it's nice, right? Right? With a bunch of G.I. Joes, ham and eggs, and 3 Musketeers. Yes, dude. Excellent choice for a candy bar. The only other acceptable answer is Kit Kat.
Oh
I
my god,
jest.
straight to Super Bowl.
Hey.
Commercials.
Hey, man. Hey, right. Now, if you haven't enjoyed this interview, for some reason you're like, man, this guy John, I don't like him, right? I hope you have, but if you haven't, right, what I want you to do is I want you to send him a werewolf made of paper, a werewolf made of rock, and a werewolf made of scissors that all smell like terrible burnt coffee, right? Because you didn't answer. You didn't say rock, paper, or scissors. So now you get them all, John, in werewolf form, smelling like terrible old burnt coffee. I hope they all enjoyed it, and that doesn't happen, John, because that sounds bloody, well, terrible. I don't know how to say it. That just sounds really bad, right? But for all y'all out there watching, besides that, I want you all to do 3 things, right? Give it that thumbs up or whatever the equivalent of that is wherever you're watching it, like, subscribe, comment, whatever. We're up a lot of places, and I've actually got everything to where it's up all the places at the right times now, so it's kind of nice, right? 2, get your comic on. 3, have a good night, y'all.
We're listening to the questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the questionnaires.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The questionnaire.
Get your comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.